All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. For this conversation, I'm really excited to be joined by somebody who's had a pretty interesting musical journey that has returned in recent times, and there's a lot of very interesting activity, and is somebody who was involved in a very unique time in music industry history, in my opinion. Without further ado, it's my great pleasure to welcome from the band Season to Risk, Steve Tulipana. Steve, how are you?
Very good. Hi. Nice to thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure, man. And there's like I said, there's some stuff going on in the here and now. Let me first say how happy I am to have a conversation with you in 2025 about things happening now with Season to Risk. This isn't just a retrospective conversation. There's things happening in the present, which I always consider the most important part of time, and it's great to see the band is out there doing things now. So I guess first and foremost, there is coming up on Record Store Day, which I believe is April 12th this year. There's a vinyl release called 1-800 Meltdown.
Correct.
And it's a kind of an interesting package. It's a cool package. I really love the cover, which glows in the dark. It's just musically, it's outstanding. Visually, it's really up there. So I think it's definitely a strong release to kind of not only reintroduce the band to people, I think, but also let people know who haven't heard you. It serves as a nice introduction. Um, so kind of a twofold question to start with on that release. There was a prior incarnation of this on cassette that came out,
Correct.
I think, in 2021. And there are some differences between the cassette and the vinyl. So let's kind of start there and what's what, because initially I was a little confused at first when I got the current version that's coming out. So why don't you kind of clear up, the differences between the two versions?
We've always been good at confusing people. That's kind of been our MO for 30 plus years. Um, we had started getting together, like everybody's kind of spread out across the country, and we were getting together at our guitar player Dwayne Trower's studio. He's been a recording engineer forever, and we get invited to do certain little shows. We've never really stopped for more than like a year and a half or two. We've always done at least a show or two where we went down to South by Southwest back in 18, I think. We just kind of always, we're all really good friends still, and we all have other music projects, but sometimes we're like, let's get together and do something. So we're in his studio, and we're kind of like we're kind of going through all this unreleased demos and things like, what do we want to do? We've got something here. And as we're going through a lot of this stuff, we're like, well, let's just put this out on Bandcamp and make a cassette tape to the cassettes are back, like this other project I did called Z Lieben Machine and had put a cassette out that sold out like immediately. And I'm like, well, let's do that. It's a low, cost and people are collecting them. And so we kind of went through all this material and we made this thing, and it was kind of bookended by this experimental recording project we did called 1-800 Meltdown, where we were just kind of just playing in the studio with like we were prank calling our bass player Billy, and we were adding all this like synth and heavy bass and chopping it up and just learning how to do. Really, we were getting our chops in the studio, like how to do this on our own. I mean, this goes way back, and so we kind of like put that together with some random electronic projects I had done, and then some cover things, some things that were really small release, some CDs and things that just people don't have access to. So we put that all together, made this cassette, and then some other people started getting interested. Well, oh, you guys are back together. Like they, for some reason, they saw, and we've been reissuing all our records on vinyl too, all the past records, and we're like, okay, well, this somebody wants to do this, but we can't put out we have to cull it. We can't put out the covers and the things that were on other releases. So we kind of condensed it, and then we're like, well, we need to get to work. And so we started working on new material, and so there are several songs that no one's ever heard on this new release, and some of the other stuff no one's ever heard either, unless you got the cassette, because it's very, very rare, you know. So that was the impetus for all that, and I'm really, really proud of the new song, the brand new song, and it I'm really just excited to get it out there and play some dates. We haven't been to the East Coast in 30 years, 20 years, 20, I guess since 2001. So what, that's 24 years. So we're pretty excited to do that.
So, the impression I'm getting is the band never really disbanded. It was one of those things that sort of became an occasional activity for you guys after a certain point. I guess after around 2001 is when things changed in that respect. But you're really kind of hitting the ground running a lot more now in the
Mhm.
last couple of years. What do you think really spurred that on? Was it just a desire to kind of get back in the game in a more ongoing fashion, or was it just the desire to make new music? Was it a combination of those things?
I'd say a combination. The bass player, the current bass player, Billy Smith, and I have had other projects together over the years. We had a band called Roman Numerals that we did for quite a few years in the 2000s, and then we did a record with the other guitar synth player in the band now, Wade Williamson, called the Water Moccasins. So we've always done stuff, and Dwayne's always been the guy that's recorded us. So we've all always around each other, and I think we just kind of felt like we had some material, and it was the time to kind of, we just found the time, you know. We're just trying to make the time, and also, you know, like you get to a certain age, and you're kind of like, there isn't that much time left, and you know, we're losing friends left and right, and we're like, let's do something before we can't, you know. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think there may be some viewers watching this who are unfamiliar with the greater history of the band. So I want to give a little bit of a Cliff Notes version of where things were. The band really sort of hit the scene, or at least my radar, early to mid 90s. The band was signed to Columbia Records. You released albums on that label in 93 and 95. And that was kind of the golden era of major labels kind of throwing money at all kinds of stuff they traditionally wouldn't have in the past. You had your Pearl Jams and your Sound Gardens, who were great bands, but they were still kind of like classic rock sounding bands to me. But then on the other side of the spectrum, you had like the Jesus Lizard and Shudder to Think signed to a major label, and it's like never in a million years could you have seen that coming. So you as a band, I think we're kind of more in that latter category where it was very, very alternative, even in the era of alternative music. Um, and I know you were doing big tours in those days. You were part of that push that the major label world was making at that time. I've had other people on this channel who were there 30 years ago, and some of them they have fond memories. Some of them are still trying to pay off their label. You know,
Mm.
there's all kinds of variations to that narrative. Where do you think Season to Risk fit into that? What do you um, still take with you as far as your experience being on a major label? Was it ultimately a positive one for you, or was it more in the lesson learned category of things?
I think by and large they let us alone. They let us do what we wanted, and we were very very adamant from the get-go that we wanted to experiment and do what we wanted. And I remember a conversation with uh Don, I think it was Donnie Einer. Like, he was like the president at the time, but you know, he was like, we want to make you guys we're committed for the long haul. You're going to be like Aerosmith. Like, this is where we're at in music, and we're going to have you for, you know, forever. And we're all like, yeah, I doubt it, you know. And nothing against him. Like, I think that's just where their mindset was, like, this is new kinds of music, and music is changing, and we're going to it's going to be a new version of what we've done in the past. And as we know, that did not work out. Um, but they let us alone, but we said no to a lot of things they want us to do. And I think in the end, it, you know, made them not want to really stick it out or push some of the stuff, more experimental things we were doing. And, you know, I mean, and then, you know, we got cold. And there was that a great cull in, I guess, 90, late 96 or 7, and they just dropped hundreds of bands. And then, it made it a little more difficult for us to get tours. But we kept the DIY route, and we just did things on our own, and we found some indie labels and to work with, and kept at it for another, you know, 5 years, I guess. And at that time, you're like also back in your hometown, and you're trying to figure out how to make money, and you're working in other jobs, and that led to well, the rest of the last 20 years of my career turned into something still involved with music. But that's to me, I don't know if I learned any lessons. I really just absorb it, and you learned a lot of things from it. But in the end, I'm not a bitter person. I don't have any ill will about the whole thing. I really still can't believe it ever happened, to be honest. So
Mm.
that's just kind of like, I'm just like, how did the hell did that happen? This little band from Kansas City.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you mentioned the experimental side of the band, which really expanded as time went on during that era. Usually it's the other way around. You get the crazy first album or demo, and then things kind of smooth over. It went the other way largely with Season to Risk. And the thing that's always struck me about your band is the musicianship is a higher tier in my view than a lot of the other bands, even now, but certainly back then. Um, so musicianship was always important to the band. That's
Mhm.
that's clear. I listened to the upcoming release, and I'm like, how are these guys even doing that? Which I always like. I'm a musician myself, so I'm always trying to pick out things that can help expand my horizons. And I've got my homework cut out for me with this one. Um, so now that again, it's 2025. It's a good 30 years since that era. Um, how would you say that the musical language between all of you has evolved in that time?
It's strange that I sometimes, like, I listen to the new stuff, and I'm like, it just feels really natural, and it feels like it's part of everything that we've done. Dwayne has, like, you use the word language. He has a language to his guitar playing and what he comes up with. He has an ear for dissonance and different modes that I'm always like, how can that sound so sour and evil but also so melodic at the same time, like that kind of thing. And I can go, oh well, I guess that's kind of Carrie King or something, but it's not in that idiom. It's like some kind of, I don't know, it's mental. And we've always played with just phenomenal drummers, and I think and I think that made the bass player, like, I think it was maybe some kind of competition where everybody just kind of wanted to take it to the next level and make it more, and as being, I played guitar on the third and fourth records a little bit, but I found that live I wasn't very good at doing that live, and delivering the manicness that I want to express in those songs. So we added another guitar player that and brought in a lot more synthesizer stuff. But I yeah, I think we know how to stay out of each other's ways and support each other, but also like bring it at the same time. Like everybody's kind of bringing it. And Billy and I really work well together, like vocally. I've always like working with him, and we just kind of bounce these ideas off each other pretty well. So
Excellent.
he's a very strong singer, melodic singer, and where I'm kind of more of a just kind of an expressive singer.
Mm. I mean, one thing I also would add, focusing on this upcoming release, it's just how great it sounds sonically. Even in my case, I tend to just live in front of a laptop, so I'm streaming music, and it sounds so full, and especially the bass and the drums, just from a production standpoint. All this material. I know it's kind of, drawn from different places, but as a coherent release, it just sounds good, and I think that's important too because people are listening to. music not on turntable so much anymore. I know this is a vinyl release, so it will have
Mhm,
to
yeah,
go
I'm
on.
like, gotta get my records right there. I'm a
But
vinyl
I
nerd.
think it's one of those few records that actually will sound good in any format, so
I hope so.
yeah, to put that out there because it just sounds fantastic. And the listener will understand what I mean when they hear it because it's got such a punch to it. It's like, whoa, and I love when that happens because it's kind of rare. So um
Great.
it's really cool. Um as I've done this channel, and I've been a music writer for several years, I know there are, several people kind of working behind the scenes or in an artistic sense with bands. And bands rely on the people who are working with them or working behind them or what have you. So I always welcome new chances to add names to discussions I've already had on the channel. And there are two people who I know worked within Season to Risk's orbit over the years I wanted to perhaps get into with you. The first being Martin Bisi. Uh,
Oh, I love Martin.
yeah, great engineer, really cool guy. I've talked to Martin in the past, and he's fantastic. And you did work with him in the great studio that he has out there in New York. How do you think working with Martin impacted the sound that you were going for at that time?
Uh, Working with Martin was really, really special, and that was one of the best things that happened from being involved with a major label because they let us. We lived out there for a whole summer in the studio and worked with Martin every day, and it was like boot camp, but we learned so much, and that was we were cutting tape, and it was the old school style of recording, very minimal early automation, but very rudimentary kind of things that you could do to call back mixes and stuff. But he that space has a very unique sound. That you hear it on any of the many records that he's done there, like whether it's Sonic Youth or Unsane or Swans, it has a very live sound. Uh, in retrospect, sometimes we spent a lot of time. Sony spent a lot. Columbia spent a lot of money trying to figure out how to clean that sound up after the fact. And we had, they had hired some guys that worked with Ministry to kind of come in and try to do early drum sampling to get more clarity and stuff. And I think that record just is it's we're so busy rhythmically and so much, filling the bandwidth that record has. In the end, it sounds exactly like it should. Like it has this cacophony that is BC Studios, and I think it's got to be probably the noisiest record to ever come out on a major label. I mean, I don't know. Tell me something that matches it, but in that regard. But I think that's really what it fits the tone and where my head was in my life at the time, and it was magic. I love Martin, and anytime I get to New York, I try to uh, meet up with him, and I'd love to go do another record with that guy
Yeah,
someday.
excellent. And I wanted to bring up somebody who's sadly not here anymore, unfortunately. Frank Kozik did artwork for you,
Hmm.
as he did with a couple of bands I've played with over the years.
Hmm.
What's your looking back, what's your impression of what Frank offered the band during that time?
Uh, I didn't really know Frank. It was suggested by this guy Benji Gordon, and I knew his material, but I didn't know him personally, And we made the connection, and he was told him, gave him the record, and he kind of had it for quite a while. And he was going right at that time. He was going through some pretty heavy shit. Um, but I don't really, need to go into any of that, but it kind of was taking a while. And finally I had to call him and talk. And I'm like, God, yeah, we're kind of on a deadline here. And he's like, it's like, I know I've just been going through some shit, but all right, I think I got something for you. And then all of a sudden it came real fast and we fell in love with it. And then I happened to have some on the inside. There's these other images and I happened to have like I'm an artist as well. And I collected all this imagery and cut up and collage stuff. And so I'm like, oh, this works really great with that. Comes to find out later, that image is he borrowed it from a Butthole Surfers poster he'd done about 6 years before, which I found it in a like just randomly found that saw this poster. So which is fine, it's cool, but it's a little different. But kind of wild, like, and so good at that, like repurposing things and make and doing weird juxtaposition of uh we really like that because it's like you look at it and you're like, okay, what is this? And then you find out it's something more there, like something that doesn't quite match. I
Mm.
like that. I like that when you kind of blindside somebody with like they think they've got something, they think they understand it, and then you're like, oh wait, I have no idea what the hell's going on here. So
Yeah.
I think he was brilliant at that, and I love his work and yeah, it's super cool to work with. To have his art on on our art.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely, definitely. Staying on the industry topic for a minute, I'm thinking how different it is, even from the 25 years ago when I started. I was writing for a print magazine, and back then we didn't have this. I'd have to drive down. I was living in New Jersey at the time, so I'd go into New York, and the label would put an artist in a hotel room for a week. Remember those days? And like
Oh yeah,
journos would come in like one after the other, and
no,
you
I did
know
it.
you'd get press kits that were actually in paper, folders and the whole thing. Um, the industry has just changed so much now. Um, and there are, from my perspective, a lot of advantages and disadvantages to the model now. Because you're still here and the band, was again so heavily in that. What ultimately I think ended up kind of being the last gasp of that in a lot of ways. What are your views on the way things are done now and the possibilities of bands to not only survive but reach different levels in a world where the model has changed so much?
Um, I think really what I'm seeing, I'm not talking to any major labels or anything, but the DIY thing that came out of like art, like, always referred to us as a punk band. I mean, we're not a punk band, but we came out of that punk rock, post-punk attitude and DIY ethic. And the fact that we had gotten signed to a major label was just such a fluke. And there were some friends were like, "Don't do it. No one will take you serious. Don't do it. They're gonna call you sellouts." And we're just like, you live once. This is an opportunity. Let's see what we can do with it. And it was a pretty cool ride. And like I said, we continued touring, DIY and putting out independent records for, just as long as we were on the major label afterward. And the hard thing is the money is not there, but that's one thing that now they still have major labels, but the money's not there unless it's something really commodified and that they can hammer down and that sounds just like a slight variation of something that's already popular. That's how I see it. I don't, that's not, from where I am looking at popular culture, um, but, uh, you know, I've, for the last 20 years, I opened a music venue here in Kansas City, and I've been booking bands for forever before we opened that. And, you talk about the physical copy of things or the ability to kind of get, there's something about understanding an artist when you have like their whole package. It's really weird, like now, young bands are just like they won't even be on, like, Facebook was good in ways because it really could you could get all of the things at once. Like you could kind of figure out if they have a following, you could see what they're trying to present visually, what they sound like, music, you kind of. And now it's just Instagram or small short reels, and like there's it's really weird. Like I don't want to sound like a grumpy old guy complaining about it, but it's a little harder to understand what an artist is trying to present right out the gate, you know. And so it takes, weirdly enough, you think it would be quicker, but it takes a lot more time to try to get the gist of what someone's trying to express. Um, so I think that's kind of strange, but it's kind of I don't know. Like I said, don't don't want to be like, yeah, the grumpy old guy, but I do see some younger artists like that. Vinyl's back. Everyone's, making cassette tapes and making physical media. I mean, that there is a drive to do that, but there are financial limitations. It's really tough for young artists to do that on their own, you know. So I don't know. It's weird. It's just like you said, that was the last hurrah of it. We were very fortunate to be involved with it, like um, yeah, it's just that's about all I got on that.
I'm just waiting for singles to come back. Remember
Oh yeah. Oh
singles?
God, no, that doesn't need to come back. I did buy an 8 track recently. They were putting out Sacred Bones is putting out these old country records on kind of on obscure country records on 8 tracks, and
Hmm.
been picking those up. Usually I just give them to my business partner because he's got a really nice old school console, and it's
Oh,
just kind
wow.
of, he loves that. That's his thing. But so I haven't listened. My point is I haven't listened to one yet.
And you mentioned touring, so I want to get into that. You do have some dates coming up. In the video description when this posts, I'll put your link tree in there so people can access all the
Please.
updates and see where you're coming. Um, I mean, what's touring life like now compared to the initial run of the band? I mean, obviously you're older guys now, but and you run a venue as well. I want to get into that too because um, we just went through COVID obviously, and things were a little tough and tight before COVID too. I think people may forget that now, but it
Mhm.
wasn't always easy before then. You know, so kind of a twofold question as a touring musician yourself, what's your impression of the way things are? And as a venue owner, how do you think these greater factors are impacting live music venues at this point in time?
I mean, touring wise for us, this thing that we're getting ready to do is 10 days. It's the longest we've done consecutive. And um, we've done 5 to 7 every other couple of years. Usually we kind of do the I-35 route, Minneapolis to Austin, and kind of stay in this zone of the country. But in all of those, and like I said, in other groups I've played in, I hit the road pretty regular, weekend warrior stuff. And uh, I'd say the venue wise, the venues are still kind of like they always have been on the smaller, I'm talking, you know, 200 to 500 cap venues,
Mhm.
clubs. And that's kind of where we reside. And they kind of run the same way. They still have the same vibe. And I think a lot of people that are involved with them are people that like us that were around in the 90s for that kind of really the post Black Flag get in the van attitude, like let's just do it, Um I think uh I think it's harder for younger artists to kind of get that vibe and really just go for it. A lot of them, I've never, and COVID did change that too. I've never had so many cancellations in and like where now it's like you never canceled unless your van broke down or you were stranded on the highway. Now people all the time start tours and they balk because it's hard, Um, it's wild to see that, like that kind of mental shift, and it's about, it's probably smart. It's about mental health. It's about physical health. It's about, uh, you know, people don't like people don't party like they used to. probably for the better, to some degree. It makes a venue hard on a venue because you're not making a lot on ticket revenue. It's really about the ancillary, which is the alcohol and et cetera. So that's changed, on that regard, but people still come out, people still want to hear live music, and people still are like to get together and experience that communally. It didn't, there was a whole discussion of COVID. Okay, everybody's got to go digital. We all got to have a digital channel, and everybody's gonna just stay at home and watch concerts from their house. And that's, I mean, that's not happening. You know, it just isn't happening. Not in any way that could make a living for artists or even whatever the uh the channel is that wants to do it. I don't think it's there still has to be that like that going to church vibe.
Right.
So I don't know. Like I said, I feel like in ways it's the same, being older. We just talk about being old like that. It's harder, You're not sleeping on floors. You got to spend a little money to to do it. Where you were a lot more like, I don't give a shit. Oh, they use this cat as a pillow, or whatever. I mean, like, uh, but you know, uh, I still when we go to places, we still have friends that are involved in the industry, whether they work in clubs or are in bands, and that have gotten old with it just like we did. And we it's a community that supports itself, and I really love being part of that. And hope to, like we put up bands, my wife and I, bands that play the club, we put them up at the house all the time. And I just love being part of that, like that community of rock and roll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I had another Kansas City musician on recently, a fellow named Gary Robert. And I always like talking to different people in spots of the country I haven't visited as a touring musician. As you know, having been on the road, every city has its own character, its own vibe, its culture, its way of handling one another and working with bands. Um, Based on your travels, how would you define Kansas City? If I were a touring musician hitting that spot, what would I most likely find out there?
Uh, I mean, people are really nice here. It's incredibly nice people that are pretty. It's funny because you think about us as the middle of the map, and it's a red state, and you've got a lot of it's very rural, and you've got a lot of Kansas City is kind of a bubble, like St. Louis, Kansas City kind of are on either side, and we always talked about, I had a friend in St. Louis, and he'd always joke, he's like, Kansas City's like West Coast and St. Louis is East Coast. And he would compare. He's like, "You guys are like California. You guys all say dude and talk like skaters, and you have like just easy going, chill vibe. And in St. Louis, we're all hard, and like." And I was like, "Wow, that's really, really interesting observation. That kind of holds true a little bit. Um, it's great. Some people love the barbecue. I mean, if you're into barbecue, it's the best in the country. And we'll arm wrestle Texas and for that, but that's not really my my hobby or my thing, but something to be proud of. And great jazz here, a lot of people, Charlie Parker was from here. You have a lot of people trying to preserve that history, and that's been a big push to really really elevate the knowledge of the jazz history here. I think some people don't realize it. But yeah, it's beautiful. We get all the seasons, and we're right off the river. We got rolling hills, and it's nice. I like it. when I was young, after Martin, this experience with Martin, I'm like, I'm moving to New York. I got to move to New York, and it just was so easy for as much as we toured to be here too, because we could just do the loop, and we could get anywhere within a day, and and then come back home and have a little breather, and then go do the other side of the country, and that was and it's incredibly affordable too. So we just stayed here, and we were able to, you know, build. Dwayne and Paul, the original bass player, both have their own recording studios, and they're busy all the time. And they put out, I mean, they make cool records constantly, and people come here to work with both of those guys, and yeah, it's this city's been good to us. So, and I think there's quite a few venues, not a ton of venues, but there's you can see any night of the week, you can see just about any genre. So
That's great. That's great. And what is the name of your venue?
it's called Record Bar.
Record Bar?
Mhm.
Very cool. I like your reference earlier to going to church. That resonated with me because, sitting where I sit, obviously we're doing this over Zoom. And with a few minor tweaks, my schedule permitting, I could have it up after we're done talking. I probably won't in this case. I got a couple other things happening, but in a very short period of time, it's up there.
Mhm.
I can trade tracks with musicians all over the world. We'll get the WAV file or MP3, bang, it's on Bandcamp, which is cool, but everybody's doing that, so. I respect and I try to embrace as much as possible the tangible things. This is wonderful because I'm not in Kansas City and you're not in New Hampshire. And technology enables so much more connection and conversation, which is the great positive to it. And I can get all your assets now electronically as opposed to someone having to put it, pay postage, put it in the mail and do that. But I still do in-person interviews as much as possible. If somebody's coming through Boston, I'm driving down there to see him. I don't want to do this. And I still like to support live music and I like to support tangible products. So to bring it back full circle, I'm psyched that this is coming out on vinyl
Thank you.
on Record Store Day, which again speaks to the whole thing that you're talking about, these tangible things. And, I appreciate the fact that the band is back. Well, back with more regularity, we'll call it, and that you've got this coming out in 2025, man. I'm just when that came through, I was so happy to see that, because I remember you guys back in the day. Um, so just thank you for keeping the
No,
band going and keeping the ball in the air with so many things.
no. Yeah, thank you for doing this, and you know helping keep the ball up there by talking about it and sharing the information with people. That's the hardest challenge for any independent artist. Just is awareness, and again, getting people outside of your limited circle to know that you're creating.
Yeah, well, I'm just thrilled to know the band exists in the here and now to the degree that it does. I'm very happy to bang the drum here as much as
Thank you.
possible. Definitely gonna get the record when it comes out. I mean, I've got the digital, but come on now. So, really, really happy to see that you have things going on. And my door's always open if you'd ever would like to come back or anyone else from the band would like to come on. I'm always very happy to
Yeah,
spread the word about Season to Risk.
yeah.
And
Cool.
um,
Our drummer lives up. He's in Cape Cod. That's where he lives. So he's pretty close to you out there.
oh, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, yeah. And I wish you guys well on the road. I'll keep an eye out for dates that logistically make a bit of sense to get out there and check out. I don't mind traveling a little bit. I just can't do airports right now. So,
Right? Oh no.
but yeah, man. So until our paths cross again, it's been a real pleasure
Good.
connecting with you. Always appreciated your music. Love the fact that you're doing things now, and I wish you guys just nothing but the very best moving forward.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.